So now a new roundtable will be organized by Natalia. She's joining me on the stage. It's about smart transportation. So you heard a lot about transportation a bit earlier with the UIC. Now we have an extended panel that I will let Natalia to introduce.
I have one microphone, right? Okay. Well, it's exciting to be here today, especially talking about one of my favorite subjects, smart transportation. I want to invite our panel, please. Everyone, give a round of applause for Mr. Devin Stander with LightPath, with Lauren Thorpe with Aptiv, and John Rogers with Local Motors. And I'll be your banner white. I'm just kidding. So today we want to just briefly talk a little bit about what smart transportation is about. We have three amazing companies because when we talk about policies and we talk about ideas, what's important is how are you going to apply it in the real world. But right now, everyone's talking about how are we going to get smart transportation, autonomous vehicles out there by 2020. How does that happen? Well, we rely on artificial intelligence, on data input, on sensors, and on the blockchain, by the way. The blockchain is a very interesting opportunity, especially in infrastructure today. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves, and then I have a couple questions for them, and then if there's any questions from the audience, happy to be able to answer those. So we'll start here with John.
How are you? So I run a company called Local Motors, and we are deploying self-driving vehicles. Our first vehicle is a vehicle called Ollie. Ollie is a cognitive self-driving low-speed shuttle. If you'd like to see it, you can go to the convention center, and it's right inside the main entrance. We make our vehicles in small microfactories and are deploying them in Europe, in North America, Asia, and Australia this year. We have made a number of kinds of vehicles, but these ones are, of course, distinct because they are level 4 autonomous vehicles. They are electric, and they, I would say, transcend more than being a transportation device as more of a entertainment and transportation and information room that travels. And we've been having a conversation with all of our customers about what the future of their transportation looks like. So that's what we're up to these days. It's a pleasure to be here at the panel.
Hello, my name is Lauren Thorpe. I'm with Aptiv. Aptiv is the new name of the spin-off of Delphi. So if you're familiar with Delphi, we are Aptiv. We are a Tier 1 automotive system integrator, and we are moving very heavily into the autonomous drive and connected car and smart city space. We have a full autonomous drive software stack, and we basically can help our customers, who are both traditional OEMs as well as new mobility on demand and fleet manager and transportation companies, help them from kind of the bottoms up in vehicles they're looking to build to take advantage of some fantastic innovation in autonomous vehicles.
Hi, I'm Devin Standard. I'm from a company called LightPath Technologies. We're light benders. We capture photons, and what that does is it allows us to actually help create the LiDAR systems. We collimate the laser light, and we also capture the return light on the lasers that make your LiDAR system work, which is important for autonomous vehicles. We also do the optics for night vision, whether it's traditional night vision, which was called image-intensified night vision, or new night vision, which is CMOS-based night vision, or infrared night vision, which is thermal night vision. So we design, develop, and manufacture the optics, the collimating optics, all that good stuff, which makes this happen, whether it's for drones, for autonomous vehicles, for remotely operated forklifts in warehouses. We are working together with the various companies such as these folks, as well as the forklift manufacturers, the automobile manufacturers, the headlight manufacturers for safe laser headlights. So it's all about light. It's all about using light to understand where you are and then using that information to be safe as you travel.
Thank you. And I'm a city planner, an entrepreneur by background. So it's really important for me to understand a little bit better when we have big ideas happening, right? So all of a sudden, things were happening, you know, Elon Musk with the autonomous vehicles, and people were talking about how we're going to go ahead and be able to accommodate this. But the important thing is that there was a lot of conversation. And so I think that triggers a lot of innovation. And my question to the panel is, how did this whole concept, when I was a transportation planner, we weren't sexy at all. We just did the nitty-gritty stuff. And now transportation seems to be something that people really want to talk about in respect to our autonomous vehicles. How has that helped your company, your successes? How has that helped you come to a certain level of innovation and success more than anything? I know that today at CES, this is a topic that we would never have visited 5-6 years ago. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, and I think the audience would appreciate that too.
For me and for our journey, I would answer this question in one way. We have been in a 30-year love affair with the internet. And so, and I think that has rightfully dominated a lot of people's interest in terms of Metcalfe's law, as you just heard, and user advertising-based models, distribution of apps. And it's been an important step to be able to come to an autonomous driving future. Today, though, hardware has come a long way. Mark Andreessen was famous for saying, software is going to eat the world. I think that's wrong. I think that software and hardware together are making great changes. And self-driving vehicles couldn't have been a conversation that we were having 5 years ago because hardware had a long way to come. And Moore's law, as applied to the number of transistors that one can fit on a chip, has shown that hardware is also eating the world. And so today, we are at a watershed moment. Henry Ford, Sakichi Toyota, people who brought us mass manufacturing, their world is about to be completely revolved. And the way in which we use transportation devices is going to splinter and change massively. And if you look at Uber and Lyft and Didi and Ola and Get and all of the ride-sharing services, or if you look at the few EV companies that have had penetration, Nissan, Tesla, others, those are just the beginning shutters of change. This year, we are deploying 100 self-driving vehicles in locations around the world, and we see the coming wave of usage as an incredible change. And I'd say 5 years from now, we will be talking less about the internet and more about Industry 3.0 connected devices, which are more disruptive than what ride-sharing has done for us.
Yeah, I guess I agree quite a bit. For Aptiv, I think we took a good look at where things were headed, and Aptiv has always been very, very focused on greener technologies and more safety. And some of the major promises that autonomous vehicles look to deliver are both greener and autonomy. So it's something that we got very interested in and very involved in early on. The word innovation and automotive companies or tier ones haven't necessarily always gone hand in hand, or at least they've gone hand in hand, but not at the speed at which we're used to. I personally come from a software world, and that tends to move quite a bit faster than the automotive world. And so it's been an extremely interesting journey, and Aptiv has reorganized in order to take advantage of that and actually to drive it forward. So it's been a very exciting time looking at how do we bring about this change, how do we help innovation in this space come to market faster, how do we help people have safer journeys, how do we help cities create better experiences for their consumers, for their citizens, and all in a much more efficient and greener way. So it kind of fit right into Aptiv's core, what we believed in. It's just a pretty big shift in how do we make mobility happen, having historically been a tier one system integrator.
For us, it's been interesting. There are a couple of things. We live in a giant country here in the United States, And many people may not know that there are approximately 1 million car versus deer accidents every year. 1 million car versus deer accidents. So just think of the monetary destruction there. Think of the injuries and suffering to the people and the animals. My own son, who's 22, has been involved in the totaling of 3 vehicles, one of which was last year in Colorado in the mountains, and he had the great challenge, which I think is for AI, where he's skidding on ice, and he has to decide, do I go off the cliff, or do I slam into the gasoline tanker? And this is a very interesting thing. I can show you the photo later after this, but he chose gasoline tanker. And so I think it's going to be very interesting as AI has to make these decisions in real time with the car skidding across the road. So in any case, for us, it's very interesting to take the science, the hard science of optics, and putting the sensors on the cars and the packages in order to try to elevate the level of safety. Because people drive 80 miles an hour across the country and more, 130 kilometers an hour. And if an animal that's 100 kilos or 150 kilos jumps out in front of you, you've got to be able to stop quickly. And so you've got to be able to figure out how do you isolate the threats from safety. So keep traffic moving and avoid danger. So that's on one side. Then the other side is awesome, is efficiency. If you're in a warehouse and you have to move this product from there to there at a certain amount of time, you want to do it as quickly as possible with the fewest number of movements possible and with 0 accidents. And so that's why we love the precision that lasers allow us to have. So we love it.
And from a personal perspective, right, we all are business owners and we have been in this industry for a while. It's about making that problem, finding a solution for it. And so I'm a, previous city planner, previous, politician, all this stuff. And now I'm back to being an entrepreneur. Very happy about that. But in this administration, we've been talking a lot about infrastructure. And so if you had an opportunity to say what would be the one thing that the public sector could do to facilitate, your work, your success. And we are very fortunate here because we're at Eurotechweek. We have companies from all over Europe. And just like in Europe, as we do in the U.S., we do need policymakers, and we need sometimes for them to get out of the way or to make sure that we have regulations that help your businesses. So from that perspective, what would be something that you think that we could tell, because we are being recorded, we could tell, policymakers what would make it easier for you to be more successful in this field?
There are so many things. It's hard to come up with just one, but I'll give an example of something that I think could be very ameliorative or move things forward quickly. Today, a self-driving vehicle has the challenge. Today, there are level 2 vehicles that are deployed on the roads right now, and the idea that those vehicles would need to see a stoplight, which is a light, and then translate that into a signal that it can understand in horizontal, vertical, different shapes, different shades, different sun, and then cause the vehicle to do something and then give other vehicles the signal about what it's going to do is a broken way of going about things. It's much better if we just have the computers talk in bits to each other. The communication pathways are there, so thinking about vehicle autonomy is about making many jumps. And if you're asking for something, investment in infrastructure which allows vehicle to vehicle and vehicle to grid communication is a really good place to start. Our stoplights, communicating with our vehicles are very important, but more important is our vehicles communicating to our vehicles. We will always have deer who are not IoT, and so they are going to have to communicate through their heat signature. But we have a whole lot of other vehicles that are mandatorily going to be out there on the road, and we should start communicating with each other as quickly as possible. 802.11p is a standard that's out there. It's a good standard, but getting infrastructure that actually reads it and uses it, it's coming. So if you can ask for it, or ask for other integrations of technology that allows you to be able to communicate, is a great way to move. That would at least be something I would say. Vehicle to grid, and vehicle to vehicle.
So I think that, first of all, we've been really impressed with the couple cities where we have really active engagements at the responsiveness, the dialogue, the speed. I mean, I mentioned automotive being potentially perceived as being slow before. Talk about, cities and the perception along those lines. So we've been really impressed and happy with the couple cities we're actively engaged in at the open dialogue and the speed at which they're moving. That said, we have there's plenty that needs to be done. One thing I would say is operating in an environment of uncertainty when we're looking to put vehicles on the road is one of the more challenging things. And so having those dialogues early on, getting an opportunity to give input, making sure that cities have a good understanding of vehicle capabilities of today, of tomorrow, and 5-10 years down the road to help them in their planning, I think is a really important dialogue to be having, because it'd be a shame to plow down a path of technology on the one side and not have the legislation and the regulation on the other side that makes those two things kind of go together and help us get to that point faster. So that would be an open request, I guess, for more dialogue and a desire to dig into the technology a little bit more.
I would think about the emergency management. So if there's some sort of disaster and there has to be an evacuation, I would like for the planning to start ahead of time as opposed to afterward. So it's much easier to create a system and a plan from the beginning, and this is the very beginning of a new world. So let's figure out how to organize an evacuation, or even how to get 100,000 people out of Yankee Stadium or Candlestick Park now, as opposed to later. So I like to solve problems ahead of time.
And it's about resilience. We've had a lot of disasters lately, and all of a sudden we have new offices called the Resilience Office, and we have one person assigned to that. So we have to be a little bit more strategic about how that, thinking about before it happens rather than later. I really want to thank you all for your time and your answers. Do we have any questions from the audience? Does anyone have any questions for our wonderful panel here? If you do, please raise your hand and let me know. Don't be shy. We're a small group here. Happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir. Please speak very loudly.
Hi, thank you for this very interesting panel. A question for John. How does the traditional car maker industry perceive your local initiative? I mean, are they trying to collaborate, or are they trying to hijack your know-how? Can you elaborate on that?
When I started the company, I thought traditional car makers would be an enemy of what we were doing. And I have found that not to be the case. There is so much going on in the industry right now, and everybody wants to know what the future looks like. So here's the bad news. Suppliers are going to win big. People like Aptiv and people like LightPath. Suppliers have a lot of things to offer the market. OEMs have a more difficult future. They are over-capacitized in some ways for the kinds of vehicles they make today. Tesla was a first shot across the bow to say, we're going to do it differently. And there's so much more different that's coming along. To sort of shed some light on what's going on at this show alone, this has become the place where automakers introduce cars. Toyota just introduced an e-Palette. Baidu has introduced other vehicles, and some of those are car companies and others of those are not. Toyota didn't list a single car company in its competitor set when it introduced the e-Palette here. So the bad news is there is going to be change. It's just inevitable. The good news is the large OEMs have not looked at us as a threat as much as a learning opportunity. 5 years from now, maybe that'll be different, but I honestly think that this future, the Morgan Stanley analyst, Adam Jonas, has said that he sees the automotive future as a $10 trillion industry, as judged by the fact that we drive 10 trillion miles a year as people, and if you charged $1 a mile, which is about what people could cost out now with an appropriate gas tax or road use tax, it's a $10 trillion industry. Right now, that's a lot bigger than the $2 trillion industry that it's currently judged at. So there's a bigger headroom for everyone. OEMs have a difficult future to pick out. My thoughts.
Well, thank you, and I really want to, please give a round of applause to our panel who's been so gracious and joining us today. And change is always good.